A couple months ago, I decided to check out Hazbin Hotel for the first time. Because of the new season coming out and some of the out-of-context discourse I was seeing, I finally got too curious and I needed to see what the deal was. My experience with Hazbin up until this point was watching the pilot years ago when it first came out, then kind of forgetting about it, then watching the internet explode over it when the first season dropped. So I checked it out and it was fine. Not my cup of tea, but I get why there are people who both love it and hate it. There are some elements I have gripes with, but there were a lot of elements I really enjoyed. The animation is great, the voice cast is phenomenal, and there were some really solid comedy beats. And in a world where there are remakes, sequels, and live-action remakes everywhere, I absolutely understand why people were excited to see an original idea take off. After seeing so much hype and hate, I was kind of expecting something more dramatic on either end of the spectrum. I was about to say that everyone who hated it completely overreacted. And then I got to one scene. Like I mentioned, I had my gripes with the show, but this scene takes all the writing problems I had with the show so far and ramped them up to 100. It's a really good picture of something the show really struggles with: world building. Now, if you're a fan of the show, I'm sure this sounds a little crazy. What do I mean by the show has a problem with world building? This show is filled with so many creative ideas, and it really makes hell feel alive. I can look in the background of almost any shot and see a bunch of wonderful and strange little guys that look like they could have their own stories. Now, before I get into this, I need you all to agree to one basic term. If the answer to any of these questions I bring up about how the world works is answered in the wiki, in an interview, or in a social media post, but isn't present in the show, it does not count. For the sake of the story, that does not exist. Talking about part of your story and executing part of your story are two completely different things. Got it? Good. With Hazbin, it's not an issue of creativity. It's an issue with how the world building undercuts or interferes with the tension in the story. It's like the world building and the stakes are incompatible, and that's most obvious with Hazbin's magic system. There are other issues with the world building that I could talk about, like the fact that
he was the first human soul in heaven.
But also...
Hi, hello. Abel here.
But for the sake of talking about this scene, I'm setting aside my wider critiques and pet peeves to focus specifically on the magic system. Okay, so what do I even mean by magic system? In fiction, magic systems sit on a spectrum between hard and soft magic. Hard magic systems are defined by rules. If you want X outcome, you need to do Y every time. In these worlds, magic is a tool to solve problems. Think Avatar: The Last Airbender or anything written by Brandon Sanderson. Soft magic systems are far less defined. There's often no one set of rules, and magic can be unpredictable. In these stories, magic exists to create wonder or is meant to be unknown. Think Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. Every story that has magic in it is going to sit somewhere on that spectrum. Hazbin has a very soft magic system. Magic is more part of the vibe of the world than anything with tangible rules. Rather than the magic being based around a set of rules, the magic is based around the aesthetic of the characters, and most of the characters have a seemingly endless array of powers related to that aesthetic. There are a couple of things that set limitations on the characters, but there's little that defines the overall rules of the world. In terms of individual character abilities, there are no consistent rules for the audience to rely on or to build tension on. Even the things that have structure don't have super clear guidelines. For example, the main premise of the show is that Charlie is trying to redeem sinners, but we learn in season 1 that no one, not even the higher echelons of heaven, know what gets someone into heaven. Even the hardest parts of the magic system isn't very well defined. Now I know that specific example is for story reasons, but that still shows the trend and kind of the style of how the world treats magic and its rules. Now I love soft magic systems. Hard magic systems can sometimes treat the fantastical too much like a science for my tastes, and I love how soft magic systems can make the world feel limitless and like a place prime for exploration. However, soft magic systems can lead to very frustrating outcomes if the writer isn't careful. The biggest trap soft magic systems can fall in is pulling solutions out of its butt.
Of course. Phoenix tears have healing powers.
When the magic is so fluid, writers can be tempted to use magic as a generic bandage to any problem. When it feels like magic will do whatever the story needs it to regardless of what the characters are doing, stories feel cheap and like the stakes don't matter. Why should audiences get invested in stories and characters if magic can just swoop in and solve all the problems? So, generally, in order to keep a soft magic system balanced, writers need to establish what limitations exist. It's less of a detailed list of rules like there is with a hard magic system, and more of a sandbox. You can build whatever you want, but all the sand's gotta stay in the box. In Lord of the Rings, magic is very flexible, but only one of our protagonists has any access to it. The limitation is that only wizards can use this kind of magic, and wizards are a very limited resource. Or, in Harry Potter, the magic is limited by the skill and knowledge of the characters. The knowledge of the characters and material resources like wands or potion components limit the things the characters can do. Almost anything is possible, but you gotta take the time to learn it first. The scope can always expand, but that needs to be a purposeful story development rather than the story bending to allow it. Gandalf brings himself back to life, but it's a major turning point for his character to the point that he takes on a whole new identity. Almost every major development of Harry's magic comes after a lot of training or trial and error. And a lot of those moments, like when he finally summons his Patronus, come at the climax of the story as the culmination of what he's been learning all book. So, bringing it back to Hazbin, here are the limitations I've seen for its magic. Among the sinners, there are overlords. These overlords have much more power than regular sinners, which they use to stay in power. Does this power come from the sinners they oppress, or is this power innate and that's why they're overlords in the first place? Unclear. As overlords, they can control sinners who have sold their souls to them, or give those sinners power, and have various flavors of magic to restrain, blast, or otherwise fight people. Some have bonus powers, like hypnotizing people. Charlie, as the Princess of Hell and daughter of a fallen angel and sinner, has a unique set of powers that make her stronger than the typical sinner. Is she stronger than the overlords? Unclear. Lucifer has similar powers, but he can't hurt sinners because of the condition of his fall. Angels can fly because wings, and are also armed with angelic weapons to kill sinners. These weapons are also the only thing that can kill angels because they're made of a special metal. The Seraphim have true forms, and besides them, Adam seems to be the only angel with additional magic because we only ever see Lute and Abel fighting with melee weapons. Some of the limitations are pretty solid, like the angelic metal. It's the only thing that sinners can use to kill angels, and it's a rare resource that takes some time to get. Great! Same thing with the overlords owning souls. If you sell your soul, you can gain power or fame or anything else the overlords can offer, but they now have control over you. Also great. There's a lot of room for flexibility with how this works, but it still creates really tangible stakes for the characters. But when I look at a world like this, my biggest questions are where does the magic come from and what can it do? Everyone seems to have different kinds of abilities, and there's an assumed hierarchy of power that's very important to the story, but because everyone's powers look different, it's really hard to place them on that hierarchy. And again, that would be fine, but the hierarchy is actually a pretty important part of the story. Like, when Vox says he's the most powerful sinner in hell, it mostly feels like talk because the things he's doing both before and after that revelation look very similar. And again, if he was just saying that, it wouldn't really be a problem, but this is actually a pretty important plot point, especially since both before and after his ascension, Alistair looks like he's on a relatively even playing field with him. This makes it really difficult to appreciate the tension of certain scenes or have a clear understanding of what's possible. It's not always clear what's meant to be a big special moment and what's supposed to be just a regular thing that the characters can do at any point. But if the story acknowledged that the magic of this world was unpredictable and unknowable, and that even the most powerful characters don't really understand it, this would be way less of a problem. In fact, it might even be a benefit. If the magic of hell was a wildly unpredictable source of power that could burn you as easily as it could help you, that would make this more of a feature rather than a bug. But that's never how the story presents its magic. It's written as if the audience is already expected to know how the rules work, so the story doesn't bother explaining them. Soft magic systems can truly get away with a lot. Think of all the random things Gandalf does across The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. But it still always feels balanced because of the limitation that's shown to the reader. Gandalf is the only person who can do magic. Magic is generally unknowable, and because of that, Gandalf uses magic very sparingly. This leads to each new use of magic feeling powerful or wondrous, and not random or story-breaking. I think something that would have really helped the show is if they set up a limitation or boundary like that early on. Something like, regular sinners are just like regular people and they don't have their own magic, but overlords are special. The more souls they own, the more their power grows, and they start to manifest magic related to their domain. Even though there are still questions that pop up, at least this sets the boundaries of the sandbox. Who has magic? The overlords. Why? They own a bunch of souls. Now there's still room for creativity with each individual set of powers, but it also feels like it's part of the same world. Even though I've raised my gripes with this would all technically be fine if everyone's magic just kind of still existed like magic ray guns. If everyone just used their flavor magic to beat each other up, some of these details kinda don't matter. I can believe that two magical characters can throw enough magic at each other until one person ends up on top. The fight between Alistair and the V's is a good example of this. Everyone has a fun array of aesthetic magical powers that they all throw at each other until Alistair strikes a deal. I don't need to understand the details of everyone's powers to understand who's got the upper hand in a given moment, or why Alistair surrenders when he does. What's not fine is using undefined magical abilities in an undefined way to solve a very defined problem. And that's what happened in this scene that made me crash out. So what's the worst scene in Hazbin Hotel? What's the culmination of all the issues with the world building and the magic system? The climax of the season 2 finale, the Hear My Hope scene. Okay. Let's set the stage. Vox and Alistair have spent the last couple of minutes beating each other up. All the while, Vox's hell nuke that's powered by Lucifer has been loading in the background. They have each other on the ropes, and Team Good Guy has been fighting to get the hell nuke power down. Vox starts to lose and starts freaking out about wanting to be a god, and Valentino rips off Vox's head, turning him into an iPad. The V's attempt to run away, but Val can't fly. But even though Vox is down, the weapon is still going to go off. Carmilla says that they won't be able to get the people out of the way in time, and it will kill everyone. It's too late. They've lost. Then, Emily walks up to the nuke and starts blasting it with her magic, and the titular song starts up. Then Charlie joins her, blasting the nuke with her magic as well, and slowly the rest of the main characters join. They're either using their own magic or giving moral support while standing in the circle. During the middle of this, Lute and Abel pop down from heaven, and Lute tries to fight everyone. She and Veggie fight for a bit until Abel finally gets his courage and tells Lute to stand down and stop trying to murder people, and the two of them go back to the portal to heaven. After Alistair demonstrates that he's not going to help unless Rosie first helps him, Rosie fixes his staff. The two of them join, blasting at the weapon, then the rest of the Overlords join, and now the weapon is enveloped in the magic. At this point, Velvet and Valentino even join in, and all the sinners plus Emily raise the weapon into the sky with their magic, and then it evaporates into rainbows. And they did it. The day has been saved. Okay. So, a couple problems. First, why does this work? Alistair had been beating the crap out of him for the past couple minutes, and this dude is, at this point, the most powerful sinner in hell. Why can Valentino just rip his head off and this solves the problem? I'm pretty sure any of these blasts equals the power of Valentino pulling really hard on Vox's head. That or Valentino is just really buff, but if that's true, then why was he struggling so bad against Husk and Cherry? More importantly, why does this work? Carmilla establishes that this is going to kill everyone and it's too late to shut it down. Okay, great. Parameters. Simple, believable, and it creates limited solutions which forces the characters to get creative. And then Emily just starts shooting bubbles at it. We have no idea why she thinks this might work or what this is accomplishing. And it's totally fine for her to do something that seems hopeless because it's still the right thing to do. However, it should still, make sense. Or, we should still know what she's trying to accomplish here. We've seen Emily open portals and create the Egg Boys, and since she's a Seraphim, I can assume she's got powerful magic. But I've got no idea what this is meant to accomplish. If she has healing magic or something like that, you would think she'd be using it during the scene where she's trying to rescue a bunch of people. It kind of looks like she's pouring, her life essence into it. But again, even with that explanation, I'm completely guessing at it because the show hasn't done a good enough job establishing where the magic comes from and what it can do. And that's a big problem when magic is meant to be the solution to the problem. A conversation between Emily and Charlie before this could have done a lot of the heavy lifting to make this more reasonable. If Charlie was frantically trying to figure out a solution and saw Emily stumbling towards the weapon and asked her what she was doing, Emily could say something to the effect that she's trying to use her angel essence to counteract the weapon. She's not sure it's going to work, but she has to try. That way, the victory would feel like a major development rather than, again, magic just pulling this out of its butt. And then everyone just starts shooting magic at it. But it's also, not consistent with who has magic here and who doesn't. First, we see Emily and Charlie, and that makes sense because they're a Seraphim and a Princess of Hell, and they presumably both have strong magic. Then Husk joins, and he's not an Overlord, but he used to be one, so that pretty much tracked. Cherry, Angel, and Baxter just join in as emotional support, which tracks because they're just regular sinners. Then Nifty joins in with magic, for some reason. She's not an Overlord, which kind of throws a wrench in why those three weren't also joining, and we've never seen her use this before. I kind of assumed her only power was just stabbing stuff and bugs. Most of the other people who join in at this point are also Overlords, so then all the magic wraps around the nuke and brings it into the sky, and then it just evaporates. Why? Why and how? How does this amalgam of magic result in these two very distinct and different outcomes? How do so many wildly different kinds of magic create a cohesive outcome? Charlie cites the power of friendship, which I could buy, but the way it's framed, it seems like it's a throwaway line or Charlie just being excited rather than an actual explanation. No one else reacts like this is a shocking new development or like some kind of strange and special kind of magic. There's no moment after this where named characters reflect on what this could mean moving forward. Again, this feels like the story is relying on rules it never bothered to share with the audience. This scene fundamentally fails because it sets up a clear, concrete problem and then pulls a solution completely out of nowhere to solve it. It feels like the gift basket scene. It's throwing random things with good intentions at a problem without actually considering the steps that are needed to fix it. But here, it's rewarded rather than being laughed at. For Emily's character specifically, I don't feel like she's actually learned the lesson because she's still just randomly throwing things with good intentions at problems. And this time it worked because, I don't know, the story needed it to? There's no connection between this and anything we've seen previously. The story doesn't treat this like new enough a development for me to believe that it's meant to be a big turning point. Any thematic work the story is doing is rendered hollow by how poorly the solution is executed. It also doesn't work thematically because any unity that's shown between the characters is purely out of self-preservation. I have no reason to believe that any of the overlords or any of the background characters are doing this for any altruistic reasons. I don't think they believe in the hotel. I don't think they believe in the power of friendship. I just think they don't want to die, and this seems to kind of be working. Especially because immediately afterwards, a lot of the side characters and overlords go back to acting exactly the same. If this supposedly works because of the power of friendship and good motivations of the characters, shouldn't that mean this doesn't work? Because if we're citing the power of friendship as what saved the day, then everyone in the circle should be friends. Like, I refuse to believe that Valentino and Velvet can contribute to the power of friendship in any meaningful way. This also really stings because this is the season finale. This is what everything has been building toward, and it really ends up leaving a bad taste in the viewers' mouths. It genuinely feels like the writers wrote themselves into a corner and then gave up. They knew how they wanted the story to end, but couldn't be bothered to treat the audience seriously enough to come up with a good solution. They still wanted to say something important, but they couldn't think of a way to make it work within the world they created. Magic acted the way that it did, not because the characters were clever, or as a culmination of an important idea or theme, but because the story needed it to behave that way. The tension of the scene evaporates because the characters act completely independently of the rules of the world and are rewarded for it. Soft magic systems are beautiful. They create some of the most fantastical atmospheres and show how fun storytelling can be. But they can't accomplish that by disrespecting the audience. Hazbin has a lot of cool ideas, but its inability to effectively communicate them really hurts it. There are a ton of ways that the scene could have played out that would have been really impactful. She could have flown the weapon high enough to where it wouldn't have hurt anyone but her. That would have shown everyone that she really meant what she said about caring about Hel, and it would be a meaningful sacrifice that would pose a lot of really interesting questions for next season. This show has a lot of passion behind it, and I understand why it's so important to so many people. But until that passion translates into effective storytelling, I'm worried that there will be more frustrating moments like this. But, to be completely fair to the show, next video is going to be about the best scene in Hazbin Hotel. It will highlight something the show does really well. So next time I'll be back with a less ranty video, and I'll see you all soon.